Before we begin, I would like to give you all a briefing of Cultural Legions, which is an Agile HR transformation company founded with an intent to drive transformation in organizations, individuals, and management students. We offer consulting and coaching services as well as organized Agile HR training workshops and certifications program. So if you have any questions about Cultural Legions or related to the context of webinar, please type it into the comments and we will answer them shortly. As we are pleased and excited ahead, let me welcome our speaker, Mr. David Moy, who is the Change and Transformation Practice Lead at Infoward Institute and also an Agile People Ops coach. He has more than 30 years of business, consulting, human capital, and DNI experience gained from international telecoms technology companies and educational institution with a global presence. He's also a development consultant at the University of Sutherland and a former adjunct professor in the Syracuse University. A very welcome to you, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. I would like to hand over you this virtual stage of ours, and we can begin the session now.
Okay, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to speak to the community. And I want to, first of all, wish everyone good health. I think it's very important today. Welcome joining today's webinar. No matter where you are, I believe that today will be a very fruitful and very important webinar that we can exchange some idea. Okay, I just want to make sure that everyone can see the PowerPoint, which I'm going to use it as a framework to walk us through. Okay, I assume that there's no problem. Okay, let's begin by introducing a little bit of myself, and which possibly you know that I am the change and transformation leader at the Infoward Institute. We originally start in Australia, and I'm also an Agile people coach and promoting Agile people, Agile application in Hong Kong particularly. We are expecting to go into China, but of course, as you know, the pandemic is an issue. And I got a number of experience working for international company. Hope my sharing today will be something that can inspire your thinking. Okay, basically, you know that the Infoward Institute is a research training consulting company. We are focusing on developing leaders and professionals for the future. And our organization has a mission that we want to make sure that the leaders and teams, they are able to have the mindset, attitude, and the skills to transform the organization. Possibly, you know that organization cannot keep status quo. We have a future, but we need to have people to make a better world. So that is the Infoward Institute. Here is the agenda I'm going to walk through and have some idea flow out to the community. And possibly we got some opportunity to dialogue and chat and discuss and verify to see whether this is some observation that's valid. And so let's go for today's discussion. Okay, the first one, first of all, I want to talk about the new landscape. And everyone know that we are facing the pandemic. I like to begin the conversation with a story I have. Actually, I live in Hong Kong. Possibly you know that Hong Kong is sort of a part of China. And we start to realize that there is a pandemic or a potential issue happened last year, early last year, and during the Chinese New Year. And we got some news and people start in Hong Kong wearing masks, which is unusual kind of practice everywhere. But because Hong Kong have experienced the SARS many years ago, so the people in Hong Kong are very sensitive to the situation. So people start wearing masks, and that during that period of time and right after the Chinese New Year, I personally start off a NGO project, and we go out to collect donation of masks for the people they don't have the ability to buy masks, because at that moment of time, masks is already go up very expensive. And a lot of people, they are at the grassroots level, cannot afford to buy, and they couldn't find it as well. So we start an initiative to collect masks. And luckily, we are able to be one of the first three organizations collecting masks for the grassroots level. And during the process, I found that a lot of people, when they are facing with a challenge, and most of the people are not able to respond. Most of the people are not able to look beyond their own situation. And possibly that is one of the benefits that I can reflect during the process. And that actually reflect the current situation. Because if you look back to the past couple of months, you'll find that a lot of people, organizations are still not responding positively, or they don't have a way to respond to the challenge. Okay, so this is the story I have and to show to you. And that's something I reflect during the pandemic period. And possibly we all know that the major challenge that we are facing with now is the pandemic. It's still around, it doesn't go away, and the situation looks like this one. Isn't it? It's pretty chaotic. And last year, in the international arena, particularly, I believe that, I don't know whether it's McKinsey or whosoever start off a term called new normal. Anyone know what is new normal? I don't put an article, but just a new normal. What do you know what's new normal? Are we reached the new normal status, or are we longing for a new normal? Is new normal there? I believe that no one knows, isn't it? Even though we keep on talking about new normal 6 months, 9 months, even a year ago, but no one knows what's new normal. And do we know that whether pandemic is really under control? I don't think so, isn't it? No one really knows. And in a lot of countries, I know that the government also gave a wrong piece of information to the people regarding what exactly a vaccine is about. And vaccine is not there to kill the virus, isn't it? But a lot of government, even though medical organization telling that vaccine will kill the virus, actually it's not. But we know that the situation, the world is better now than before, and that is positive. And more organizations have more hope. And as a result of that, today's session, I'm focused more on the business side, and instead of the global or instead of the social side. And I believe that is the common subject or common area that we all have. As a result of the pandemic, we know that even though it is not going away, and most likely it will become a disease or a kind of problem that we have to live with forever. It's just whether we are able to manage the symptom or manage the issue instead of expecting it will go away. So we know that it will be there forever. This is the reality. But at the same time, we find that because of vaccination improved the situation a lot. Even though a lot of countries, the borders have not yet been open, but we know that it will be open soon, isn't it? Even though like Singapore, they are aiming at open up the border, even though they don't have a zero case record yet, isn't it? Because they cannot afford to close the border forever. About business traveling, about doing business with the counterpart. As a result of my observation, we know that there will be a lot of global movement, I would say global change. There are some macro acceleration, accelerated development I would identify. Of course, we know that we have been shut down the cities, shut down the country border. And now if the border is open again, we can do business. One of the biggest challenges is the business recovery, isn't it? We don't have the business revenue for almost a year. At the same time, I found that the world is, during the pandemic period, actually bring up a lot of new issues, even though there's a lot of challenges. People nowadays start to realize that there are some, we call it universal value system. If I point to the, like say, I pick the US as a example, you know that the Black Lives Matter is one big thing in the US that drive a lot of new initiatives. Almost all international companies, they have to look into their DEI policy or their application of value system. And you find that a lot of freedom, we are talking about democratic, that kind of discussion, which is you'll find that the universal value system become one driving force behind. It's just we don't pay enough attention. The third possibly is you'll find that the global or macro level, I call it global power redistribution. And I don't know whether any audience from the China, mainland China, I don't know whether you would agree with my observation, but you know that the reality is that more and more international companies are moving away from the traditional China-based manufacturing to, say, India, to Pakistan, to Indonesia, Vietnam, Taiwan. And even some of the chips making company, they are moving the presence into the US. You will find that the global power distribution, both on political side as well as on the economical side, are changing. And we have a different kind of alliance. That leading to the economic development, there will be a big shift in a lot of ways. One of the biggest things I observed recently, I mean, pretty heavily, is the global supply chain. Because of the manufacturing moving away, you find that the entire supply chain will be very different. That can pose a lot of challenges to a country or city. I pick India as example. Apple is moving some manufacturing assembling to India. And of course, it's not only Apple. There are a lot of companies are considering everywhere. But you know that not only assembling, when you do assembling, you need to have the whole supply chain available. And that's not easy. And in the past, I have experience in doing that kind of job, and pretty challenging. Digital transformation, pretty big thing. I mean, everyone knows about it. But at the same time, we are talking about the flexible workforce. It's not only about the hybrid kind of whether work from home or going back to the office. It's basically talking about the flexible workforce. We find that the demand and supply are very frustrated. Then we cannot rely on the traditional model of staffing. Okay, but this is some of my macro observation of what will be coming or what is going on already. Okay, but a lot of people possibly they stop for a while in the past couple of months. They thought that the world is really stopped. But the reality is that even before the pandemic, there are a lot of things. The business arena, the business space has that already going on. If you look at a lot of banks, they have already the digital transformation. Insurance company, they put in a lot of effort into that area. And not only talk about the IoT, AI, I'm working with some government organization on some of the project on the AI and robotics. I know that they are pushing very hard to transform the way of doing things. Business agility is one of the domain that moving very fast and grow very fast. But of course, some area not yet there. Like I pick up Hong Kong as an example. Actually, Hong Kong is pretty slow in business agility. And that's different topic. I don't have time to spend too much of my time on that discussion. But we know that around the world, business agility is moving on, moving forward. I'll touch on that in a minute. And innovation, of course, is a big thing. A lot of design thinking, training, and adoption, and using a lot of new product development. Of course, we also know that a lot of organizations keep on looking at their business model and how they can shape, how they can transform, how they can reposition themselves. Of course, there's a term called future of work has been taught long time ago. It's not doing this 2 years. And work-life balance is an old topics, employee experience is an old topics, isn't it? But nowadays you find that people start talking about a lot of things we are facing as an HR organization, as HR. We know that the first thing I mentioned about the business recovery, which I touch on that, and business will continue to transform. Of course, we saw that a lot of organizations, they go away because they don't have the financial resources to keep on doing the business. But for those organizations that survive, they need to accelerate the business transformation and move more into IT. Particular, I mentioned about the banking industry, the insurance industry, and a lot of manufacturing are moving into AI, robotic, that kind of operation. Business agility, I think is basically still going on. But of course, you will find that one of the biggest thing is the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, it's pretty much driven by the US and Europe, but now they become a global HR issue. Possibly you'll find that some of the countries in Asia are not progressing very well. I mean, like including Hong Kong, and there are limited discussion in China on these topics. But you will see the demand is there. AI robotic will continues to be a top priority for a lot of organizations. You then will find that there will be requiring new skills. If an organization adopt more AI and robotic, you can imagine they will need to reskill their people. They will have a different profile of employee requirement, and a lot of low end or more, not low end, not necessarily low end, but more manual worker will go away, and that is an issue. And so you will find a lot of things are pretty much happen before the pandemic, but now it's just accelerating, and we need to do much more and become a big topics ahead, isn't it? Or even though we are facing a lot of challenges, nowadays we need to listen to employee more. That actually is the situation. To better up my observation, I want to share a research done by Boston University, which is a pretty new research. I have the link for that. If you cannot see the link, you can let us know, then we can send the link to you and get the report to understand. But the highlight is pretty straightforward. What they did about the massive shift of HR for 2021 or 2021. Actually, they are comparing the 2020 and the 2021. And if you look at it on the left-hand side, which is talk about what are the top 5 priority for HR in 2020. And probably you'll find that if you look at the 2021, you will find that a big shift of it, isn't it? And but of course, some of the content are still, some of the priority are still there. But the number one become the employee well-being, isn't it? We have the pandemic. We are facing with the reality, and people stay home. They work from home. Not only working from home is challenging, but a lot of company, a lot of family, they don't have the infrastructure to enable people to work from home. And possibly you and I or family member have already have some kind of Zoom fatigue, isn't it? And that is one of the challenge. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion is another one is pretty high priority, which I highlighted a little bit earlier. Leadership development is become a very important thing because the organizations start to realize that they need new leadership, new types of leader. Do they have the type of leaders leading the company into the future? Okay. Of course, you can imagine employee experience and managing remote work. And I'll come back to this kind of discussion. But if you look at the list of the priority, it's not surprising. It's really addressing some of the issue that we are facing, and which is the pandemic. But if you look at the situation, is that do this 5 priority linked to business, or to what level of business is related? So this is the question I want you to bear with me for a while, and we'll come back to that. My recent observation, if you look at this list, leadership development is one of the top priority. But let me play a little bit of devil advocate. Do you think the leadership development really successful? I would say at this moment, I use one example, but that may not be valid to generalize. But at least based on this story, you will find that possible leadership development initiative have failed already. Why do I say that? If you look at the General Electric, which is one of the benchmark company, if you study MBA or whatsoever business degree, possibly GE is one of the organizations you study quite often. But if you go to look at the GE's famous, or one of the competence people identify GE has is leadership development. They are the strongest engine to develop. They have the process, they have the culture to develop leaders. But if you look at the executive leaderships, okay, this is a list of the current executive leadership. They brought in from outside to lead that large organization, from the CEO, isn't it? They brought in a new CEO, which is to have a very different style of traditional GE type of operation. And then later on, they'll find that even the chief HR officer has to brought in from outside. I mean, they are not someone new to the HR, but basically it's not from GE. And if you look at the list, at least 6 of the senior executives, they are brought in. And that would mean that internally they couldn't find the right person to take up that job. And a lot of the job are not really, I mean, pretty technical. I mean, can be easily find and can be easily groomed. I mean, to a large extent, I would say. That would mean that one extreme case is GE. The leadership development is not delivering what they expected to deliver. And at the same time, if you look back to what I mentioned a little bit earlier, regarding the global transformation, you find that global transformation is about the supply chain reassessment and the power-based shifting. Actually, everything is changing. And at the same time, the technology advancement, making a lot of things, we do transaction on cell phone, isn't it? And we now make payment, we now place an order and on a cell phone, which is changing the world, changing around the world, everything. And not only business, but also our daily living. If you look at the global transformation, you'll find that one of the terms HR possibly very familiar with is the buy strategy. A lot of organizations in the last years or 10, 20 years, most of organizations rely heavily on buy strategy, means that they recruit people, talents from the market. Isn't it? If you have one person decide to leave the organization and you possibly easily to find someone elsewhere. But I worked in the technology company before. When we are at the time, we are working on the 5G technology. And one of my mandate was to bring in some 5G engineer. But actually, you know that there's no one in the market, they know the 5G. 5G at the moment was still under development and standard have not yet been finalized and agreed. And it means that you cannot find people that really have solid 5G kind of knowledge. Basically, buy strategy is talk about you want to go out to bring in someone, they got the knowledge and they got experience in doing something. But nowadays, you couldn't find it because the world is changing so much and so fast to the degree that we cannot find that kind of people. So buying strategy will be one of the challenge that we cannot rely on. And that leading to my observation of the demand of HR. You find that HR has a lot of demand. And if I not wrong, then I just put up the summary list of what are the current top priority of HR, and that the market are demanding or the organization are demanding, then we need to put a lot of energy into that kind of area. Okay, that will mean leading to one of the initial conclusion. For HR, agile and radical change are possibly become the standard requirement. Even if there is so much requirement asking for HR, if the HR is qualified to do the job, if the HR is knowledgeable to do the job. But in reality, if you look back to the list, this is a very long list. Who can tell what exactly is future of work? It's still evolving, isn't it? Just like the new normal. No one knows what is new normal. We are talking about diverse workforce or D&I, and some HR even not have no knowledge about D&I. And we like to talk about resilience. I mean, even though about the motivation, we know the traditional motivational model or theories, but is it still valid? No one knows. So they will find HR require a lot of new skills, a lot of new knowledge. It's not so easy to acquire in months, isn't it? It's a ton of knowledge, a ton of experience as well. Okay, so this is the landscape from my observation that we are into. The second topic that I want to touch on is the Agile movement. Possibly some of the folks audience joining this webinar have a little bit of knowledge about Agile. Agile is a philosophy or framework has been used in the software development and replacing the traditional waterfall approach of project management. But of course, now it's more than that. We want to apply it in a way to improve the productivities as well as improve the human element of project management, which has become the standard already. Of course, a lot of organizations have no knowledge about Agile. But to be honest, a lot of banks, a lot of IT company, and a lot of the insurance company, I will say almost all insurance company and banks, they are using some level of some kind of Agile approach in their organization for IT development. Okay, that is not a new term to a lot of people. Possibly if you know more about the Agile frameworks, actually there are a lot of different kind of Agile frameworks and tools available. And of course, Scrum is the most commonly used kind of framework. People use it because of its simple and straightforward and easy to a large extent as compared to other. And Kanban, possibly a lot of people know it is not a new tool, but I'm not going to go into the details. But you will find that there are a lot of new development in the Agile arenas as well. And nowadays, the application has been expanded. I put together a summary of the growth of Agile. Initially, Agile was used in software development. Possibly you know about it if you are familiar with the history of the Agile. And actually, Agile is developed by a group of program developer. And later on, it expanded to project management. It's not only the project development, but a software development, but basically a project management in a wide range of area. Nowadays, if you do a research, you will find that in the construction industry, they are now adopting a lot of Agile element into the project management. But of course, the major framework is still the traditional approach. But you will find that the Agile has been expanding into project management and product development. And then you'll find more and more into the functional operations, like the HR, like the marketing, and like even though some of the customer service. And of course, the business agility is the depth is even higher. It's talking about the whole organization has the business agility. Okay, I put forward a summary. This is basically summarize what I shared a little bit earlier. And but I want to touch on is the number 3 point. The third point is you'll find that Agile has been moved into the functions. It's still going on pretty slowly, but I'm seeing a lot of organizations, they actually jump from the product development into the business agility instead of letting it migrate a little bit, gradually. One area I'm seeing is because of the agility or agile and deep outsourcing become the important direction. And the good thing for HR is the people focus. Okay, this is my observation regarding the agile development. And the final point is I put together an enabler. If an organization want to adopt business agility or agile, you'll find that there are a lot of enablers. Appear to you that the term is pretty simple and straightforward. It's all the words we know. But the reality is that you'll find that each of the enabler is talking about different kind of understanding and different definition. A lot of this, I give you an example for at the personal level. If you look at the mindset, most of the people still having a traditional mindset of command and control. But for a agile approach, we are talking about agile. We are talking about ownership. We are talking about responsibility, isn't it? We are not talking about command and control. So this is a different mindset, and at the same time, we are talking about a growth mindset. So you find even though we know that the enabler are there, but a lot of content, a lot of new movement, or a lot of new shift. Okay, that leading to one of the demand is the management shift. I use the term management shift for the time being. I'm looking for a better term to describe the situation. But I'm seeing a lot of management practice require a different way of operation. Okay. But the reality is that organization may not have the same alignment. So I put forward a recent case. It's not a good or bad example. I just put forward a case to demonstrate the situation. As you know that in the US, the pandemic situation are pretty stable and improving quite a lot. And a lot of companies are planning to return to the office. You know that the technology company, one of the companies is Apple. And nowadays they are the CEO, Tim Cook, requesting the employee to return to the office at least 3 days a week. Okay? In September. It's not coming. And give them sufficient time because they consider Apple's culture is better realized by face-to-face collaboration. So that's the reason why they find that, okay, moving back to the office for a certain period of time can be better way to do things, getting done. But the problem happened is that there's employee protest because a lot of employees, they don't want to go back to the office. Isn't it? Doesn't mean that they don't want to work. Doesn't mean that they don't want to work for Apple. It's just they don't want to go back to the office for 3 days. They may want to go back 1 day or the time they like to go back. Okay, so that's a challenge. How HR are going to address the issue. But this situation is not only happening at Apple, it's happening in a number of the IT and a lot of international companies. So turn out recently I come to know a term called great resignation because there are more and more employees will be resigned from the organization if they are forced to go to the office. Okay. So what I want to say about it is that on one hand, we got the business requirement and pandemic possibly will be under control in months or if not in a year's time. If I take Australian government as a standard, because the government talking about probably by next year, mid next year, that will be in a good shape. So I assume that we will have 1 more year or even 9 months to go. But no matter what, pandemic will be part of our daily life. We have a lot of things to fix, including the business recovery, including a lot of new business challenge. At the same time, we have the employee issue. If you look at the list I mentioned earlier, we got the employee retention, employee motivation, and then allow the employee well-being become a high priority. I believe that a lot of HR has been spending a lot of time focusing on those well-being, resilience kind of work, isn't it? Not to mention DEI. Then what are they going to do? Can HR cope with the requirement? That triggered my thought about where HR is going. I think a lot of HR just don't have time to look into the situation because it's so complicated and we are under a risk management period, isn't it? A lot of risk management we need to face. What I did is that I want to throw it for discussion and or for future development. I don't have a crystal ball of the future, but I'm thinking about it. A lot of HR actually nowadays spending a lot of time and energy on very near-term, very employee-focused area. If you look at the left-hand bottom side, possibly a lot of organizations, the HR teams are spending a lot of time in this area. I don't have time to do the pooling, but this is the list very similar to the research I mentioned to you earlier, the top 5 priority, pretty much on the short-term crisis management mode. But if you look at the other quadrant, I make it very simple. It's a business focus or employee focus, or near-term or long-term. Of course, I make it up a lot of the, I put that in. But if you remember, I mentioned earlier, a lot of those initiatives like business transformation or organizational design or business agility, a lot happen all of a sudden. It's not totally new to the business space. It's already there. It's just the depth. But as a result of the pandemic, a lot of things has been asked to move up other than the short-term crisis management. If you look at this mapping, say for example, if people work for a technology company or they work for a chips making company, possibly you will find that you are doing a lot of things, not only managing the risk, but at the same time, you are working on a lot of global presence, moving the manufacturing plant base from China to India. But for the time being, there's limited transportation. People are not allowed to move in and move out, isn't it? So this, you will find that if your one organization, they have multiple business focus, can HR organization cope with the situation? At the same time, I forgot where did I adopt this comparison from? If any of the audience know it, let me know. I forgot actually, but I borrowed the concept and put together this management shift. I mentioned Agile a little bit earlier, other than the global macro area, but if you are adopting Agile, you'll find that if our organization are moving into the business agility, you know that a couple of things are very important in the business agility is the culture and the management focus. You'll find that Agile requires very empowering organizational culture, isn't it? The Agile or Scrum team, they have the ability, they also have the authority to make decisions on how to get things done. Possibly that is something HR don't like to see it, isn't it? Our traditional training are more talking about how to do a policing job, how to police to see whether people violating any rules and regulation, or we want to see more standardization, one size fit all. But the new requirement demand a very different kind of working behavior, working culture. There's no one size fit all anymore. A lot of flexibility. a lot of empowerment. Okay, if HR is the one know more about human being or human behavior in an organization, then turn out shaping a new organizational culture has a lot of things rely on HR to take the lead, isn't it? That leading to my observation of the HR role. Actually, a lot of evolution has been happening. I believe that everyone are able to connect to LinkedIn to a certain level. If you go to LinkedIn in the last 9 to 18 months, you'll find that there are a lot of new HR titles happening. My observation is, first of all, this is my personal comment or conclusion. It may make some of the folks are not happy. I will have to say sorry about that. But from an academic perspective, we know that HR is already a wrong term to use, isn't it? Why HR is a resource? What does resource means? If we remember the evolution of personnel from personnel management to HR, we'll consider HR personnel is not a cause. We are excited about HR becoming resources, but in reality, from a economic perspective, resources is not very high value, isn't it? So that's the reason why there's a term called human capital, but of course still not relevant. But HR has been used for a long time, but the reality is HR is really a wrong term for today's landscape. You'll find that there are a lot of new HR titles around the world. I mean, some are very familiar to a lot of people. They may be calling themselves Chief People Officer. They are putting back the people element into their role. And talent management, some organizations emphasize both the people and the culture element, so that they call themselves head of people and culture. And of course, the people ops is now become very common, particularly a lot of American companies. If you look at FedEx, they call their HR organization people operations. And recently, you're hearing more about people, HR become chief happiness officer. They want to make sure that the people are happy. And or they find that they didn't listen to their employees sufficiently, then become a chief of staff of employee listening. So a lot of new titles reflecting the new emphasis. But still, a lot of people are still adopting this model. I believe that you're pretty familiar with this model. If you're in the HR community for long. And Dave Ulrich proposed a model based on the HR roles. And turn out still a lot of people will want to become a strategic partners or change agents. But they, of course, don't want to be an administrative expert anymore, but they may want to become an employee champion. He's focusing on the role. The ultimate goal is to, in that role, what kind of deliverable an HR professional will do. So this is the model. The reason why I bring it up is because still a lot of HR anchor strongly into this old model. I'm not saying that this is wrong. It's just it is already outdated or pretty old model. If you look at the, actually Dave Ulrich, they have a consulting firm. They have already done a lot of rounds of HR research. If you look at from the 1987, the model I showed to you is published in 1992, and nowadays they already have 8 generations of HR competence research. Okay, it's just a matter of fact that a lot of HR just ignore the others. If you compare nowadays 2021, the 1992 model is already 19 years ago, isn't it? So it's pretty outdated. What went wrong? One of the reasons is because the university is still teaching about the old model. That's the problem. And at the same time, a lot of HR, they don't come to know the new development. That's a challenge. And turn out they are anchoring their role or their deliverable, their job in the 1992 model, which is dangerous and very scary. And our organization, as a result of the last couple of years of research on development, we observed, this is just our organizational development, I mean, our organizational view, may not be valid for all countries, but we find that there are 7 roles. The first one is strategic capability developer. How are we going to develop the capability of an organization? And the business agility, which I mentioned, HR can play a very crucial and leading role. Human capital, which is not underdeveloped in a lot of countries. Change is important because we keep on changing. And peoples and culture, I do agree with that explanation. Agile people ops and DEI champion. So this is just for the discussion's sake. Is you don't need to, I mean, assume this is a fixed and static situation. It is a dynamic. It will be evolving. Okay. Then my question to you is that business transformation is already there. Are HRs ready? Actually, a lot of HR I come to know is, I mean, maybe limited sample, but I come to know is not they may not necessarily care about the overall transformation. Not wrong. What they are more care about is, do I still have a job? I think that's more important to every individual, isn't it? And if HR is there, I still have a job. But to be honest, the topics I put forward is where is HR going? Here I want to put a conclusion before I go to the awareness. My conclusion is that HR do not know where we are going. We don't have very limited HR are taking the lead in the organization. They are driven by the business. They're driven by the leaders, the priorities. And but even though that is the situation, HR should have a stand. We need to know what is going on and what is challenging us. So I come to some of the questions that I want to pose to the community for you to consider where HR is going. First of all, I don't know where HR is going in some way, but I do know HR should be going in some area, like the 7 roles I mentioned. I believe that that is a near term. HR has to have a very balanced role to play in an organization, which possibly you may not agree, but I have a strong view on that is HR should not put to most of their energy on the near-term crisis management thing. Like, if I give you an example, I'm seeing a lot of HR in Hong Kong are very keen to attend seminars or webinar on how to change a policy to address work from home. To me, work from home is not a big thing, isn't it? We may make mistake, and some employees like to work from home. Some employees even don't have a computer to work from home. Even though that is very tedious, but that's not big thing. From a crisis management, we understand we will make mistake. Once we know we have a mistake made and we correct it, that will be fine. But I find that quite a large number of HR are not putting their focus on what will be happening beyond the pandemic. I would say the pandemic crisis, because it will become part of our daily life. Then we should look into the future about our employee, look into the future, particularly on the business, what the business is requiring of us. If the business requires recovery, are we working on area that require HR to make a contribution into? A lot of organizations are not really talking about a lot of upskilling or reskilling, but very few are doing that. If in case tomorrow is starting the business recovery, does the organization have the new skills required to address the future requirement, I believe that may not be the situation. So first of all, I would say awareness and readiness is very important. I consider quite a large number of HR are not aware of it, still putting a lot of energy into the crisis management and operational and short-term issue. We need to learn to unlearn, and at the same time, we need to have a lot of rapid learning. HR know very limited, but at the same time, with the agility, business agility, as well as the new so-called new normal, there are a lot of things that we need to unlearn. We need to let go, particularly like the business agility. We need to let go. We need to have a one-size-fits-all policy. We need to be more flexible. We need to be more empowering instead of controlling how things being done. Okay. I don't have time to give you an example, but I recently have a business presentation and find, a lot of HR peers still, like a police person. There will be a deep mindset shift from my observation, which echo my point is that HR need to let go of a lot of things. If we don't shift ourselves, we may not have the language to talk to the people, the operations. If I look at a lot of projects we are working on, with banks, the IT organization is using Agile, but the HR organization, they know very little, or they don't even know that the IT people are using Agile approach. That is not a surprise to a lot of organizations. So there are a lot of growth mindset shift and deep mindset shift. And my conclusion is that actually it's an HR choice. And I'm seeing there's a lot of opportunities. Because if you look at the list I gave you earlier, you may not agree entirely, but at least if you agree a little bit of that, you will find that there are a lot of requirements, there are a lot of demand of HR. But is HR ready for it? I don't know. I tend to agree that HR is not ready. Secondly, if everything happened at the same time, I pick India as example. If the world is really moving the supply chain to India, we have the capability of meeting that kind of global supply chain development? A lot of things we need to do short-term, near-term, at the same time work on the business side. That to me is require a very new operating model for HR as well. We may need to empower more younger generation to take up a more leading job. But at the same time, I think we may want to bring in a lot of experienced people to solve the short-term issue. Because a lot of experienced people, they may retired or they are proud to retire. But if organization let them to address some of the problem, which is near term, and letting younger generation of HR to focusing on some emerging requirement, that might be a new model worth exploring. I don't have the answer at this moment because the world is, everything is moving past. But at least I will say, we as an HR professional, we need to start examining ourselves. Are we ready for the future? If we are not ready for the future, if we don't have the mindset adjustment, I can say that we may lose our job. If we know what is the future, or we want to change, doesn't mean you have a job, because organization may want to redesign the organization. That is happening as well, isn't it? But at least if we know that, if we are willing to change, start to acquire new skills and new knowledge, we still have the capability. And it's just a choice to me. But I believe that a lot of HR still like to remain status quo, doing what they are doing now happily. I think that's fine. As long as you know that you are making a mindful choice, that's fine to me. But just from a inspiration and discussion perspective, I throw out the idea to see whether I can stimulate people more thinking. And at the end of the day, if we are able to work together as a community to improve the HR, that's the area I'm looking for. Because one person doesn't make a lot of changes, isn't it? But if we collectively seeing what is happening, and at the same time are willing to work together, possibly we can develop something which is beneficial to the business as well as to us as a professional. Okay, that's my part of sharing it overrun a little bit, but I want to give a little bit time to the audience to see whether any comment or any question you may have.
Thank you so much, Mr. David. This was such a wonderful learning session, very insightful. I personally loved the way you explained everything. I will be reading some questions that are in the chat that people have asking. So the first question is by Melissa Gehring. She says, am I right to say it seems as if businesses were already heading in a more remote and technological direction, and the pandemic accelerated this transformation?
Yeah, I would say yes and no. Because if you ask talking about flexible working pattern, it happens probably 30 years ago. And I have been working in a remote location, a remote kind of situation for more than 20 years. I would say it's hard to predict. I mean, first of all, the world is changing. Flexible definitely is the direction. At the same time, people are work from home, and you are seeing more organizations move into co-working space. And I would say the pandemic accelerated. But if the pandemic situation is under control, I don't know, because we still underestimate the human needs element. I believe that I also attend a lot of other people's seminars on the hybrid working. I would say I don't know. We need to have an open mindset and open mentality to talk to an employee. What will be a better way for the organization? It's more like an agile Scrum team. They need to find the best way of operation. Some organization is better to work in the office. Some can be working, you can outsource to someone else in Canada or even though in Taiwan. So that is a way you need to, as an organization, there is no fixed rules. It's all depending on the organization. But as an HR, we need to be more flexible and be open to options. That's my personal observation.
This is not a question, but a statement made by Zainab. She says that I think that in some countries, some companies practice HR wrongly, and even they don't have an HR department.
I would say yes or no. I mean, first of all, I do agree a lot of companies, they practice HR wrongly. That has to come to the reason is because they don't know much about HR. Because traditionally, if we assume the personnel management time, or even though a lot of small organizations, small SME, they don't have the resources to employ a dedicated person or even an organization to manage HR for them. And it's all depending on the knowledge of the owner or the management. If the leader, they don't have the knowledge and the appreciation of HR, then HR will become an administrative function, purely administrative function. But at the same time, I'm seeing that can be an opportunity because I also have the luxury enjoying a lot of startup event. I find that a lot of new startup, they are more open to the people element, which is good. And at the same time, possibly you're seeing more consulting firm or academics driving for more human type of management. I mean, I pick an example. Some folks may come to know their program called Management 3.0, which is a very people-oriented kind of management program. And there is example telling us that, I mean, people know HR and talent is important, but they don't have the knowledge to do that. Actually, I believe that that will give the HR consultant, I mean, external consultant an opportunity to build a model, because there are a lot of opportunity out there. So you're right. I would say if HR are being positioned, and that would be a big difference everywhere.
Thank you, sir. This is by Abhishek, asking what makes Agile projects management differ from traditional projects management methods? What is zero sprint in Agile?
Okay, I think that is a very big topic. First of all, it's a good question, and but a big topics. Okay, and I don't know whether the individual, I mean the person have a chance to come to the APF or cultural program. This is still a pretty green or developing or underdeveloping kind of development. But first of all, I believe that the traditional approach is pretty well defined of HR. I mean, everything we want to define clearly, and we want to do only this and that. But I would say at the Agile, HR require a very different mindset, and also require HR people to learn about the Agile. And Agile approach is not really a fixed way of doing things, it's a framework. But if you learn it, you know the principles, you know the shift, I mean, from what are the emphasis, what are the important elements to make things happen. I mean, more or less like a cultural transformation. Of course, the easy way is to participate in one of the certification that the APF provide to gain more knowledge. At the same time, there are some books out there, they are talking about Agile, HR, and it's talking about how we can support the business from a new way of human science, which because of the time constraint, I may not be able to fully answer a question, but I would encourage you to have a chance to explore through some of the books or the APF framework. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I'll just search for other questions. So Arnab says, an HR manager is key to ensure the well-being of the employees, like flexible work hours, work day, leaves for personal reasons, etc., as well as driving ahead the organization's success and its profitability. How far should an HR manager be flexible in this regard to provide personal space and time for self and family, at the same time not compromising the business profitability?
You mean I don't know whether the question is related to the HR individuals or the employees' time and space.
I'm sorry.
I'll try to ask. I try to answer this way. First of all, it might not be making HR people comfortable. Is that I think HR should let go of how to make sure the work-life balance is really happening. I'm not saying that we don't care about the well-being. I think the important is, because I work on the DEI area a lot, I think that we still using a top-down approach of management. Work-life balance doesn't mean that everything has to be equal, isn't it? If an employee like to work for 10 hours or 15 hours a day, and he is very happy, and he is very healthy, then I don't think HR should concern that much, isn't it? As long as the employee, they know what make the employee know about it, possibly that HR can help. Like say, do we have an opportunity, a way to help employee to understand the importance of a balanced life, which is not about the equal time allocate to allocate to every aspect of life. But importantly, that help the employee to understand they need to take the ownership. Instead of spending a lot of time on HR, HR time to organize the program and exercising program and make sure that everyone go to that exercise. I think that may not be a high priority. But if an employee know they have the knowledge and they have the ownership to make the choice. And I believe that that is important than making sure that they have a real work-life balance. And at the same time, I think a lot of things can demand different priority. To me, may not be a very traditional HR solution, but the employee, they need to make the choice and how they can live a balanced life. But at the same time, focusing on the job to get the business focus. Not easy to be honest, but it is dangerous for HR to take up all the ownership and without involving the employee participation. That possibly is the answer I can offer today.
Marley. Yes, I believe that is so. Just Way says he enjoyed this session and it's very informative and good to know we have many opportunities ahead, meaning Agile HR.
Okay, that's good. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to share with the community. And if any one of the member are interested in further discussion, and feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you again, Mr. David, for your time. And also everyone, thank you so much. And also everyone who participating to this webinar. You will receive a survey where you need to fill up and send back to us so you can receive a certification of participation. Mr. David, would you like to add on something before we wrap up?
Yeah, I also invite all the audience to provide your feedback on today's webinar. Other than that, I think the building a community is important to have a two-way communication. It's not just a webinar telling you something, stimulating you, and making you unhappy or happy. But more importantly, you can share your opinion as well as give us some idea what topics we can discover or explore more. And I think that would be also helpful as well.
Sorry, doctor. Sorry, Manal. I raised my hand and I had a question.
Yeah.
Yes. So, doctor, I wanted to know, in regard with the Agile HR, how should we convince old executive, like HR executive in a company who have been working for more than, let's say, 20 years and have been using traditional ways? So how should we convince those ones to switch from traditional to Agile HR?
Okay, thank you for your question regarding how to shift to Agile HR. It's not easy to be honest, because even Agile, the word Agile, because I have conducted a number of the webinar and seminars on Agile, and a lot of people, they don't understand what exactly Agile is. So that is also challenging. I think possibly you may want to start off with a conversation of how can we improve the organization? Does the management have a assessment of the current practice and do an analysis or diagnostic of whether it's working or not working? Why is it not working? And how can we bring back to the human element, or particular, of course, we are referring to employee, but I think it's more than an employee. How can we bring the human element into the organization? That has to go back to the basic definition of, or the formation of an organization. Organization is a collection of people. They work together for a common goal, isn't it? If people, the management understand this, everything, success or failure is because of the people. I think that possibly will provide a good starting conversation. And then having the management team able to explore to the Agile concept and give them some storytelling about the Agile people application and Agile organization, that will create a dialogue. Because it is not easy for them to go through I would say, faith leap if they know nothing about Agile and Agile people. So that will require a lot of conversation. If there's no way of having the conversation, it will be difficult for them to jump to that kind of adoption. Yeah. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, Dr. It does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think you've answered all the questions. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Have a good day. Good weekend.
Have a great day. Okay.
Bye-bye.
About the participants, can you all please fill the form so you can receive a participation certificate? So let us now look back to what we learned today. The key takeaways of today's webinar are, okay, I'm sorry, let me see. Oh, I would like to invite Gopal to share the key takeaways. I'm really sorry.
Thank you, Manuel. Sir, still with us? Okay. Okay. So let's just go back and look at what are the key takeaways that we have learned today. So sir has started the session by explaining what is the new landscape and what will be the new normal, and basically we don't know what the new normal is actually. Then he explained that how the new leadership has failed by giving an example of the General Electrics. How the global transformation is shaping up is like the power shifting from where it has been to the new players. There has been a change in the supply chain of globally. Then he also explained that how buy strategy is no more working, and what should be the HR priorities. Some of it was the future of work, diverse workplace, etc. Then he explained about the agile and radical that can be possibly become the new standard. Agile movement is the new agile framework at workplace. Some of the agile frameworks that is implemented are Kanban or Scrum. And then he explained about the business employee matrix that basically gives us a highlight of what basically the new agile HR method is. And then he moved on to explaining about growth of Agile, the new HR role, how the Dave Ulrich model has been outdated. Finally, he concluded by saying how we need to learn how to unlearn quickly, and how also rapid learning is a very important aspect moving ahead to adapting the new Agile HR role. This is it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gopal. On behalf of the Culture Legions, I would like to thank you all for participating. Mainly, I'd like to thank you, Mr. David, for giving such a wonderful webinar, very insightful. Please, if you have any questions, you can always ask them by using our channel and our social media sites. We request you all to turn your camera on so we can take a picture. Thank you so much, guys.
So it's a request for everyone. If it's possible for you people, then please turn on your cameras so we can have a memory of this wonderful session that we have had today. I can definitely see some pretty faces on my screen, but I'll request other people as well. Please turn on their cams. Team Culture Legends and all our viewers that have connected with us today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. We'll just wait for 2 more minutes. And also, if you have not yet filled the feedback form, please make sure you go back in the comment section and fill that first. Otherwise, we won't be able to send you your certificate. Okay. So I think that's enough. So a smiley face, everyone, please. We need a big smile. Come on. It's a morning time. You people can't be that small smile. Okay, we need a big smile. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, David sir, for joining us today. I can see you smiling, and that is also one of the best parts.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, and make sure you have filled the form. Thank you for joining us today.